Welcome to the Slide Getting Tech Simplified channel. And today we're keeping the Women in Technology series going. Let's start 2021 off right. I have a treat with you. Her name is JL. She's an entrepreneur. She's going to share our story on how she got into IT and how she continued to thrive in IT. So JL, would you mind letting the audience know how you got started and a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I have the quote easy job, right? Because I'm the marketer. So I don't have to know all the coding and all the stuff. I just have to know what to say about it and what to talk about it. But I've been an IT person, an IT personality, since I was little. I always wanted to know how things worked and what the background was. And I have just a natural attraction to computers and coding and logic. So that kind of drew me in there. And so, Microsoft ended up being a really natural kind of combination. And I spent 10 years marketing for Microsoft. And I'll give you a little bit of background from a professional standpoint. I like to break up my career into three halves. So I say, the first half, then you have the second half, and well, now I'm kind of at a third iteration. So I'll call it a third half. But the first half of my career, I was at large marketing agencies. And I worked on large accounts. This is my personal fur assistant, by the way, this Pooh Bear. So I worked in marketing agencies, and I worked for large accounts like Nestle, Purina, Visa, United Airlines, McDonald's, a number of little brands that you might recognize, and a bunch of little brands that maybe you've never heard of. Yeah. So after I had a relatively established career working in marketing agencies and doing what was called direct marketing, right, at that point in time, or database marketing, Microsoft called. And I said, okay, great, let's go to Seattle. So I worked for nearly 10 years as a full-time employee working in the marketing department at Microsoft, and had just an absolute fantastic time working on brands like Office and Xbox. Xbox is a little sexier than Office, but both products that I really love. And then when it came time for me to move on from Microsoft, I started my own business and I started consulting. And I do actually consult to Microsoft. Microsoft is one of my clients. So I'm one of those people, who leaves and then comes back. And it's fantastic. It's a fantastic place to be in, to be able to have Microsoft as a client and then to be able to do some other things. One of the things that drew me to Microsoft, a company that's as large as Microsoft, is that they have the ability to pivot. A lot of large companies don't have that innate ability. And it's true that they, in a lot of ways, get mucked up in amongst themselves, but they do have the ability to make quick changes and to take quick left turns. And so as a marketer, there's always something new going on. But in terms of how I got into marketing, I really fell into it. I didn't understand what marketing really was. Although, if you listen to my parents, they will say that I was a marketer when I was 3 years old. When I was 3 years old, or 4 maybe, I ran around the neighborhood and I got all the parents and all of our friends into the backyard for a talent show. And I had all the chairs lined up and we had a stage and we had everything except the show. So, but I had everybody there. I got the whole neighborhood there for the show, except we didn't really have a show. So so if you talk to my parents, they'll say, yes, I was born a marketer. I was not one that took a straight trajectory. There are many people who understand what they want to do, understand, what they want to do for a living and what industry they want to work with. I was not one like that, which has made life really interesting because I've been able to say, oh, that opportunity looks interesting. Okay, let's go over here and take those natural progressions. And so starting working at a marketing agency, I was able to work with a lot of different clients who were doing a lot of different types of marketing and kind of learn a lot from people. Marketing agencies in those days, more so than I think they do now, had more layers to them. And the layers that they had, meaning like seniority. So they had more people with more layers, and it really allowed you to get to learn from a lot of people and learn a lot of different disciplines under one roof and get exposed to different type of technology, different type of strategies, types of industries. So it was a great opportunity. And that's really how I got into marketing to begin with. So when Microsoft called me, I was not really looking. I was running a department with Publicis, which is I think one of the top 4 agency networks in the world, based in France. And Microsoft called, and I was like, this sounds really interesting. And I came up and joined a small group here at Microsoft. And like I said, it was there for 10 years. And then it came time to step away from that. And I really wanted to be able to work with smaller organizations, smaller companies, and work with people who were inspired and wanted to try to make something real, and make something happen. So I left and started my own marketing consulting company, and I didn't really focus on one thing. And that was really, I think, was a mistake. So I think that if I could look back and give myself some advice, is trying to do everything, or trying to just talk to people and say, oh, I can help you with that. I can help you with that other thing. I can help you with this thing. And I didn't even know what to charge. I didn't know what my time was worth. I was very unfocused. I was very all over the place. And while I was enjoying it, it was difficult as a business. I really wasn't building a business. I was building a job, for myself, which is kind of not what I wanted to do. So out of that, I fell on my face a number of times and changed my business model 2 or 3 times. And one of the things that I noticed was that as I was meeting with these companies and talking with them about doing their marketing, the majority of them hadn't done enough work on their brand up front. Now, when I say brand, I don't mean like your logo and your colors and your tone of voice, which is all important, but just the foundation of what problem are you trying to solve in the world? And who is your customer? And why should that customer care about you and your product, and how your product is solving that problem? That's that core brand foundation. A lot of my clients hadn't even thought about that. So by the time I walk in and I'm like, okay, great, you need a new website, or you need this new campaign, or you need something, whatever. Okay, great. Well, what do you want to say? And I would get these blank stares, like I have 4 heads, going, well, aren't you going to tell us what to say? And I said, well, sure, but I need to know who you're talking to. Like, you can't talk to everybody. You've got to talk to people. So I began to understand that there was really a need for a lot of these mid-sized and small companies to really focus on their brand and really step back and take a look at building that foundation and figuring out what problems are they trying to solve in the world? Why should people care? Who do you want to talk to? And what do you want to say to them? So
you said a lot here, and it's been fantastic. And one thing I do want to talk about right now is you talked 2 things I want to peel back with you and go a little bit deeper. What if someone is unfocused right now in their career? What did you do to take that curiosity you had, tame it, and then build a business? And whether that's, if it's me and I don't have a business, I'm building my brand, what steps would you do to clarify that? Because someone like me, I'm curious in everything, and the new shiny object, I'm doing it, I'm bringing it in. And it did take me a long time to figure out, I actually got an outside consultant to audit my YouTube channel. And they came up with the name Tech Simplified, to like, Sylvester, everything you do, you're simplifying technology. And the difference I see with you is that you have a lot of energy, right? So, keep your name in it, but you need to brand it, like you said, and tech simplify it. So what if someone is in that stage? What would you tell them? What did you tell yourself to help you build that business and stop building a job? That would be really compelling. And then after that, what kind of, you said that, you always been curious, but was there something that you knew technology was for you? And when you made that pivot, I know you talked about a little bit from, a number one marketing company to a technology company, what intrigued you to go there? So those are the two questions. I just want you to see if you can unpack for a bit, because I think you already dropped a lot of great gems, and I think you're just going to spill out a little bit more. So I'm ready to catch them, so.
Okay, good. Yeah, I haven't word vomited all over your podcast, hopefully. So yeah, a couple of things. One thing I did that I think I did that I'll chalk it up and say, okay, this was the right thing to do, which was like one out of like a list of 157, was that I paid attention. I had one of the things I mentioned that I really noticed that a lot of businesses really needed to focus on their brand and really get to the heart of what their brand was. And so I had actually built out a workshop. And of course, now we're in COVID times. So if you guys are looking at this 5 years from now, we're all stuck inside and nobody can go to an in-person workshop right now. But one of the things that I noticed when I was holding my workshop was that about 90%, 85 to 90% of the people who were attending were people who had an idea that wanted to know how to turn this idea into a brand or into a business. And so they were there to really get started and get a foot in the door. And I started paying attention to that. And those are people that really excited me to work with. And so I began working with startups. They're startups. And in a lot of cases, they're even pre-startup, where, like I said, they have the spark of an idea and they don't even know if it's going to be viable. Okay, I think this is a good idea, but what does that mean? Like, could this even be a product? Could this even be something? So I got real excited working with those kind of entrepreneurs. And so paying attention to that, I actually pivoted my business and I started working a lot with startups. And I started really focusing on what startups need. Startups, or, I like to say startups, pre-startups, and growth-minded businesses, because you can be a 20-year-old startup. You can have a company and you've got some years under your belt, but maybe you think like you need a refresh, or you need to look at your audience and see what you're doing and perhaps, pivot in your product diversification. Those are things that make you a startup, even if you've been in business. And being able to sit down with those people in that moment where, they know they want to move it forward. They don't have the tools. And to sit there and talk with them and ask the questions and take them through, the process that I've developed, which is, frankly, you can go Google or Bing search on, how do I brand my business, right? You get like 15,000 different ways. Mine's another way. It just happens to be the one that I use. So it works for me. And working with those companies, and when you see their eyes light up, and you see, and, I had people cry in a good way. Now, I believe I've cried enough. I've cried a lot in meetings from Microsoft, trust me. But this was like good crying, where they realized that, oh my God, it's possible. Or you get me, you get my dream, my idea of what I want to do. And that's so amazing and gives you so much energy. So I really decided to listen to that and take that compliment and say, I had never even thought about working with startups, but let's kind of follow what I'm seeing here. About that time, I get a phone call from my friends at Microsoft who say, hey, would you be interested in coming in and consulting and working with our startup group? And no kidding. And I said, yeah. And right about that same time, I was asked to become an advisor for a startup accelerator group. So all of a sudden, when I turned and I listened to what I was hearing and I turned into it, that's when things started opening up for me. And I've gotten the opportunity now to work with a number of different startups and fantastic people and kind of get them on their way. And companies that maybe like they're not big enough to have a CMO, a chief marketing officer or a marketing director. They're not at the stage where they want to really invest in that role full time, but maybe they need someone to come in, take a look at their plans, make adjustments, or give them some ideas, and then their team can take off with it. And I can come in and, check in with them on that. So I think that's the answer to one of your questions, which is, what did I do right, or how did I pivot? And it was really about listening to that and looking for those cues and then going with that. Now, when it comes to IT, many years ago, okay, I'm like 150 years old, right? So many, many, many years ago, I remember my parents coming home with an Epson Equity One computer, a desktop computer, and they set it down, and they set up the monitor, and then boom, there was like a stack of books. I'm not kidding you, like this tall, on, how to run it, how to use it. And I remember like they took the first book and they flipped open to page 1, and I looked at it and I looked at the computer and I just went, boop, and I turned it on and I literally started doing things. Like I had no idea what I was doing, but I just sort of understood it. I just sort of understood it. So that was pretty amazing. I did try coding at one point. I learned, I think at that point it was C or C+. And I spent all weekend trying to code this game I was working on. And okay, anybody out there who's a coder, you might totally understand this. And I got into 111,000 lines of code. And then it turns out I had an error on line 49. After I had spent literally 3 days typing in lines of code. And in those days, you had to back out each line and get back to your error, fix it, and then write each line again. And I was out. That's it for me. So I knew that was not for me. But again, as a marketer, I could then still go into an area that I really enjoyed and be where things were really happening and where the possible was happening. Things that were possible were coming to life. And a lot of those things that I thought we should really have are now in the market today. When you think about where we were even 10 years ago. So it was really exciting. So when Microsoft called me, I said, yeah, of course, little did I know, right? Everybody who's worked at Microsoft or any large company, I thought I was going to the Vatican of data and cutting edge, and then you get there and you realize you're okay, you're still doing this. This is what we used to do in 1982, in marketing. Now we need to move ahead, which was great because that's something that I could bring to the table. So ended up being great. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that story. But especially the story about coding. That's how I knew coding wasn't for me either. Right. So
yeah,
I got a little bit of ADD in me. So I remember I'm coding out this game. I think it was Pong. Right. And I'm teaching
right. Something like that.
Pong, and they're like, all right, Sylvester, make sure you put comments, every so often, so when to go back, for those lines, right? So I'm like, I don't need to do that. I'm just gonna code it all the way through. I got to the end, it's not running. Teacher's like, something is wrong. Where's your comments? I'm like, I ain't writing. I didn't think I need it. You gotta restart this over unless you're gonna figure out from this line of code what you did wrong. I'm like, yeah, I'm done with this. I'm going.
Yep. Check, please.
Management information systems, here I come, computer science about, but I know I just wasn't having fun with it, right? So I realized that early, right? Then, like you said, I did management information systems and I did marketing, right? I got to talk about the business side of it. Then I got to nerd out every once in a while. Then I found pre-sales, like architecting or pre-sales engineering, which is a little bit of sales, a little bit of tech, and that's my lane. Or I did technical product marketing, again, business and tech,
right.
So you can find it. The one thing I see what you're saying, you found where you could excel at, where you can bring your energy, your excitement, and marketing and IT. You got to do both without, the switching gears. I wanted to be a teacher, but then I didn't want to get paid like a teacher. So, and no offense to the teachers,
Yeah.
some of y'all probably making a lot of money, but I wanted to have an opportunity to help my family as they got older, to take care of them, right? So I switched, and now I get to teach people about IT, right? So I'm teaching, but in a different discipline, right? So,
but that's really awesome though, because you like listened to that inner voice and said, you know what, I want to find a way to do this.
yep. So, but you're
I
right.
love
I had to scale down, really focus on what I wanted to do, and these opportunities keep coming up to work on that vision. But again, you had to scale it down. So I love that you said that. So, what advice would you have given yourself earlier in your career? 'Cause I think we talked before we started recording this. It's hard to looking back and saying what you would do because
Oh my gosh.
we were here now. But if you did have that time machine, you could go back and it wouldn't mess up everything. Is there anything that you would change?
Oh my God. Well, first of all, there were, so many opportunities that I just completely and like didn't take advantage of back in the day, right? We were talking about some of these and it'd be like, go for it, buy stock early. 401k, yes. But so it's hard in a sense to go back because I really cherish every opportunity that I've had and every experience that I've had. But I really think that maybe I would have said that, think about the business side of things, right? Don't always, I hear it a lot today. I hear people say, well, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life, and if you can turn your hobby into a business, you should do that. And that's great. That's fantastic. And obviously you and I are having, some success in being able to do that, but you still need a hobby, you still need that outlet. And so while I look back and I look at the times that I've really been just like where work has been my hobby, I'd say, remember that what you're doing for work is a business and treat it like a business and make sure that you're getting the returns, not only financially, but also emotionally for what you're putting into it, and understand that. And then think about having a path. What is your development? You don't always know. Because I'll give you an example, back when I was working in marketing agencies, or even when I joined Microsoft, right? And I'd never been working inside of a company that large. You don't always really understand, like, what is the right trajectory here? Where do I want to go? I have no idea. And as I mentioned, I really lucked out because as opportunities came up, I said, yeah, that sounds great. I'll go do that. I remember taking a job where I honestly did not know what the company did. They did this thing called, you ready? Database marketing. And all I knew was it had kind of a techie name and marketing together. And I said, great, that's got to be awesome. Things have got to be happening there that I might like. And I really didn't fully understand what the company did. And I just remember in the interview, they're like, well, what about database marketing attracts you? And I'm like, well, it's got the word database and it's got the word marketing. But so, yes, there are times when you kind of luck out and take those chances, but just remember that the trajectory that you're taking is a business. Even if you're going to work for another company, it is your own business yourself. So think of it that way. Think of it holistically. What do you need to be studying? What do you need to be looking into in terms of associations? What do you need to be doing as a hobby outside of that to give yourself that balance? And really remember that at the end of the day, you need a hobby, you need a job. And when you focus on your job, focus on it like it's a business.
That's going to be my tweet for this one. Focus your job like it's a business.
Like it's a business.
That's a mic drop. How am I supposed to go after that? How I'm supposed to do that? Let me stop playing around. But one thing I do like what you said is having a hobby, because I love IT. I loved it since I was younger. Been building computers since they brought it in. I remember the first computer was like some green computer. It has green screen, green and black.
Right? The green writing on the thing.
Only thing this thing could do is play Wheel of Fortune. And I think I ended up getting it to play Jeopardy. I don't know how I did. I remember they gave me the book, and I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Let me just click some buttons over here. And
that is awesome.
Right. But, so this to me is just fun. Right. But I realized I like writing. I do a lot of poetry on the side, and the poetry helps me take some of that stress and write it out. And before COVID times, I used to do a lot of open mics where I used to go perform it, and it wasn't to place. Like, I never really want to do slam poetry. It's more for de-stressing, but I can see, like, even now, like, I'm a little tense. And when you said that, it triggered me like, man, when the last time I wrote? Haven't wrote in a while. So I need to go tonight and write back into that little journal and finish writing up, some, I got a book idea that I'm working on for these short stories that I want to finish. Let me go and write something. It's been a while. But again, you're right. Having a hobby is essential for that balance, right? Because one thing I realize is you got to do the job that they came you to pay for. So really understand that. Sometime when you're a creative, you want to say, what about if I build this over here? And then, I know for me, they're like, well, we're paying you to do this, Sylvester. So make sure that you do the job that they're telling you. Right. And if that doesn't stop you, if you do got other ideas, you can build like hobbies. Like I do my videos on the side. No one really told me to do this for my job. I just did it because people ask me the same questions over and over as a tech person. Let's put a video there, and then I don't have to do that anymore.
That's so awesome.
Point them to the video, and it'll be cool. All right. And I'm like, man, what do I do when I look for something? Like, I go to YouTube, like for tech stuff. I'm not handy. I go to YouTube to learn how to screw this board in the right way. Right. So I'm like, all right, let me just do the same thing for tech. Right. So it's catapulted this right into these different conversations. So I'm love that you said to get a hobby, because I said that's a very underrated tip. And also know the company that you're working for. I've done that. I went to a company, I thought I knew what they did. And when I got there, I'm like, man, this is not for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I gotta go, so
that's great. It's very brave of you to want to leave.
And the manager is like, Sylvester, do you love this? Because you seem like you can do it. But you get any excited to do this? And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, what are you trying to say? I don't really quit, right? And it's funny, like you get words of encouragement. My daughter was about 6, maybe 5 months at the time, and I was reading the book. It said, "Put Me in the Zoo." It's called the name of the book, and it's about this, this animal who got all these spots on it, and he wanted to go in the zoo. And he's showing all the tricks that he can do. And then the zoo, like, you don't belong in the zoo. You can't come in there. But at the end of the story, you met some kids. Like, you don't belong in the zoo. You belong in the circus. So when I read that book, I'm like, why is this little kid's book talking to me right now? And I'm like, man, maybe the job that I'm doing isn't for me. And I need to go somewhere else. I'm trying to conform to this role, but it ain't for me. And once I did that, I came back on Monday, put in my 2 weeks and said, I'm going to leave on a good note. And I left on some like a good note. I still have a great relationships with them, but that was the best thing I can do.
That's fantastic.
It's not a failure. When you find
what I love about that is that, so often we put ourselves in the position as we're the employee where like we feel like, we're beholden to the employer. And it's not to say to be, to totally be an asshole, right? You don't want to totally be a disruptive asshole. And I've been that person. I've been that person where I come in and I think, oh, what you're doing doesn't make sense. It's all wrong. And trust me, I still do that today. But I've learned that maybe you can use a little more tact or understand that not everybody around you is an idiot, even though it sounds like they are. And there are reasons that things are happening like that. But, it's really a great self-awareness you bring up that, hey, maybe this isn't for me. And that's okay. That's totally okay. Like if you're someone, okay, say I'm me, like I'm hypermobile, right? I have a lot of energy. And say I get into a company and I realize that everyone's like really quiet and the office talks very softly and that's just their culture. Man, I would know right away that that's not for me. But 10 or 15, 20 years ago, I might have like tried to conform and thought there was something wrong with me and said, well, I'm not fitting in right. I'm not doing this right. I'm too loud. I'm too this. And it's like, wait a minute, time out. It's like, no, this is not the right environment for you. And it's okay. It just means you need to be somewhere else and go out there and try something else. I think that's super brave what you did, and self-aware and being aware about, an environment you do thrive in, what makes that up. And I never really looked at that. I really knew to look at that. And like when you go on an interview, for example, when they say, oh, don't forget you're interviewing them too, haha. And I'm like, well, how am I supposed to interview this guy who's hiring me? Like, I don't know anything about his job. And it's like, no, you want to say, what is it about the company that you want to know so that you can know what you're walking into. And like, here's an example. Whenever I was on an interview, I would always ask my secret question, when they'd say, well, do you have any questions for us? And I'd say, great, yeah, okay. Last Halloween, what did everybody look like in the office? And what did you guys do? And if they said, oh, yeah, I don't know, I guess it was just a regular day, it's may or may not be the place for me. But a company, I kid you not, this made my decision instantly. They said, oh, we all dress up and we go bowling. And if you don't show up in a costume, the creative team comes out and makes you a costume on the spot. And you may not like what they do. And I said, you know what? I want to work here. And that absolutely made my decision. So there's a lot of value in understanding yourself and getting to know that and really taking stock of that and understanding that, it's not wrong. It's just different, and maybe it's not for you.
Yep, and I also want, it helps you maintain relationships, right? Because someone can respect you, and if they don't, you realize it wasn't a good place for you anyway, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes early in your career, it's hard to do that, right? You conform, and not saying you shouldn't, because sometimes you do need to adapt to the surrounding. But
yeah,
for me, I'm a little bit loose. I'm not going to be. I can be buttoned up, but if I have to do that 100% of the time, it's never going to work for me, right? Because I'm a little bit, I'm just happy. I like to talk. I want to know about your family. I want to know what got you there, what makes you excited. And some corporations, when you do that, like, I don't want to share that. We're here to work. Why are you asking me personal questions?
Mm-hmm.
Like, whoa, hold on. I'm not used to this. So we're just going to work. I don't get to know you. I'm here with you all day and I can't know you. Like, that, to me, that don't make any sense, So
yeah, right. Then it's like, why would you even want to be in that environment? But yet, for a lot of people, they do. They just want to come in, do their thing, and get out. Yeah.
So I guess this goes into the next question: is what obstacles had you have to overcome, whether that is external or internal? Can you share any of those with us?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple that come to mind, and one is the obvious that my gender comes into play. And what's interesting is that in marketing, there tend to be pretty even gender split, maybe even, indexing a little higher for female gender and the more creative types, back when, the colored hair, like, it wasn't considered acceptable, would walk in with the colored hair. So there's been maybe a little more openness and tolerance in marketing than in other companies. But I actually have had a couple of situations where I had not understood when I would hear from other women, well, I'm in a meeting and nobody listens to me. And I can say something and then a man turns around and says it and everybody thinks it's a great idea when I just said that. And I found myself in a situation where that was true. And I sat there, I was stunned when it happened because and I felt guilt that I hadn't taken those other women seriously because I hadn't experienced it. And I thought, oh, you're being too sensitive. You're being too this, too that. And then here I was in this situation where I was like, believe me, I'm not a wallflower. But when I'd walk into these meetings and I would turn into this mouse because I translated that nobody was listening to me. I translated that into my idea isn't good. And I really internalized that. And that really messes with you, right? And it took me a long time to get my mojo back, that it's like, okay, if they're not listening to me, then I need to work on a way to get them to listen to me, not feeling like I'm an idiot and shouldn't be speaking, because it just spiraled to where you would not even believe who I was. Like, you'd never have known me at that time because I just was so insecure. And it's just this little thing. But when you don't give everyone on your team, if you're a manager and you have someone who is more naturally soft-spoken, find ways to pull them out of their shell, or maybe ask them to write up something in advance rather than if they're uncomfortable speaking in front of a group. But or try to make sure that if you are in a situation where you're the only female in the room, it doesn't mean you have to, be the female guy. I've tried that as well. But there may be other ways to get your voice heard. So I've had that, and I've had situations where I've been in a meeting and I was the senior person in the meeting, and they kept talking to my associate who was a junior person on my team, but he was male. And they literally were looking at him and talking to him. And he even kept saying, well, you need to talk to Julie Lynn about that. Well, sure, that sounds like a good idea, but I would defer to Julie Lynn. He literally was taking his hands and pointing to me because he realized it also. And again, I was completely taken aback. Now, I've had the reverse happen. And this is interesting. Like, if we can talk real for a minute, I had a supervisor. I was working at Capitol Records, which was a dream. And my boss, who's this amazing person, super smart, amazing man, African-American, big guy, who was one of those guys that, like, he could look really intimidating until he smiled. And then when he smiled, he was like this big teddy bear. And I love him and I miss him to this day. But we would go to operational. I was his assistant. Okay. So I would set up these meetings and we would go, and in the meetings, like, he would be saying something about, well, here's how I'd like to set this up. And somebody literally said to him, well, is that how Julie Lynn wants it? and I'm like, what do you mean? Is that how I want it? Sure. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. This person did that like more than once or twice. And I had to ask him, I said, John, I'm sorry, what was going on there? And I didn't even get it. He says, oh, she thinks I work for you. And I didn't even understand it. It's one of those things that's really, you don't really know it unless you get to experience it like this. So I've had to, reflect on some of those things. And in one of the situations that I was in, I had to leave the group. I ended up having to leave the group. I tried to do what I could. I tried to change what I could from my end. I tried to adjust how I was reacting. I tried different techniques to get my voice heard, which is like sending an email in advance, doing a PowerPoint, bringing things up, talking in advance. I tried all these different techniques. And at the end of the day, I realized, you know what, it's not changing. And I'm not going to be able to, as much as I would like to think I could, affect change from the inside. It's not realistic and it's not going to happen. And I ended up leaving. And the funny thing was, when I left, like, there were other people who were like, we can leave. I was like, yeah, guess what? You were in charge of your own destiny, and you can leave if you've really tried and done your best to overcome some of these things. Then I think it's Winston Churchill who said this, but it might be W.C. Fields who said, if at first you don't succeed, try again, and then move on, because nobody wants to see you banging your head against the wall like an idiot. So, there comes a point in time when you just have to recognize that, you need to move on. And the other thing I will mention about, things to overcome, it's not necessarily an obstacle, but more of that idea of the inward journey. When I was managing a team, I had no training as a manager, or let me put it this way, the training I had was bad. I had a bad manager and didn't realize it. And so then when I had a team, I then was the horrible manager. And oh my gosh, earlier today, something flashed in my head that I did, that I thought, oh my God, I can't believe I did this and talk to this person this way, and how horrible I feel about it now. And I really wish I could reach out to this person and say, oh my God, you've no idea how bad I feel and how much you impacted my career because I treated this person really badly. And one of the things that I did, I said, okay, I need to regroup. Obviously, I'm not a good manager right now. I need to think about this and I need to turn something around. And what I did was, in my head, I started saying to myself, every time I had a conversation with someone on my team, I said, I work for you, in my head. And I said, okay, I'm going to now treat every conversation as if I work for that person that I'm talking to. And that one little change made all the difference in the world. And I went from having a team that literally revolted and went to the president of the company to complain about working with me, to having a team that had 0 turnover in 5 years and people wanting to be on my team. And it was that moment, that little trigger of, okay, I'm going to now treat everybody as if I work for them. And it completely changed everything. And this team that I'm talking about, we're still friends. This is like, God, 15 years ago. We're still like good Facebook friends. You know, we still talk occasionally, and I follow their careers. And it was really meaningful and really a fantastic time in my career. And I learned quite a bit from that. And so that's about just getting out of my own way and realizing and take stock of the fact that, okay, I have a problem. I need to fix this. And the problem is me.
Yeah. Ooh, that was beautiful. That was heated. You dropped a lot of gems in there. Man, that was great. I'm about to I'm about to cry a little bit and everything. But the one thing that really resonated with me, you said you got to take charge of your destiny, right? And then sometimes we allow, when I say we, individuals allow their company to define their purpose. And that's really up to us as an individual to say, is this a good place for me? Do I need to leave? And pick yourself and your family first, right? If you get an opportunity, take that, opportunity for what it is. Will it help you and your family, or you do something that you want to do? Take that, right? But also be gracious when you leave. Another thing that you mentioned is, for being an engineer, I've gone in rooms where my sales rep is a Caucasian person, and they'll go and start asking him technical questions. And like, no, he's the engineer, he's the architect. But like, well, we want to ask you. Well, I don't know it. Like, so you got to ask him. And then they ask me the question, and it'd be very, well, do you actually know this? I'm like, well, I wouldn't be in a room if I did, so.
Right, I wouldn't be here.
So then when I know it, then like, all right, he does know what you're talking about. But I've been there before when, and it'd be uncomfortable because my sales rep sees it and tries to put them my way, right? So I know how that feels. But, I probably had times where I didn't even know. Maybe I was talking over someone, and it's been the other way around. And maybe it's me as the one that's doing it. Like, I even had to do it like with my own family, right? Sometimes I'm really creative. My ideas, I don't even know, it might be trumping my wife. So now we talk about those things. I'm like, hey, did you want to do something? Yeah, I really wanted to do this. Oh man, I didn't even notice that. Take a pause back. And me and my wife had a conversation is, I'm very ambitious, but you are too. And this is a relationship. So if you have some ideas, let me know. I'm going to park my stuff for a bit because you always rally behind me. So it's time for me to rally behind her because she has entrepreneurship ambitions, and I'm fully supporting that. Like, what do you need me to do to help you get there? I'm good at branding and marketing. Let me help you with that. I'm good at tech. Let me help you with that. But you're good at all these other things right now, and sometimes when you make that switch, from my wife is, she go get her. She had 2 masters by 25, worked well.
Oh my God.
Made more money than me in the beginning, right? And then she had, we had our child. She wanted to make a switch. She wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. 100% her doing, not me. So whenever you want to go back, it's up to me. And sometimes when you're an ambitious person and you're not, you're taking care of family, she her priorities change. And I told her, your role is more important than any role that I can bring in. And my job is to help you with that. And I know you have these other entrepreneurial aspects. So let's define those, right? And she loves family and wellness. So she's starting to do that now, so we're helping building that business. But again, seeing that when sometimes you don't even know that you might be indirectly silencing someone, right? And having the awareness to ask those questions and making it comfortable in any relationship that you have to have those. And that's something I feel like you need to do that personally and in business, because sometimes, a company might say, man, we got an open door policy, but they say that, but that ain't what they do, right? So just be aware of that too, right? And don't be afraid of letting someone know, because maybe they don't even know that they're talking over you, right? And maybe they are. And you got to stand up for yourself either way. But I love that you share that because I think everyone needs to, we define, or like what I like to say, we write our own story. We all got a story to tell. We all shooting our own movie. If you don't like the cast in it, and then if you don't like it, like when you watch Netflix, well, if it's boring after the first 15 minutes, I'm changing it to a new movie. So if this is your life and this is your movie, if it's boring, what could you do to make it more exciting? Do you need to change the characters there? Do you need to change the scenery, right? So that's kind of like, just taking hold of it And I know it's not as easy for everyone because we start at different levels of this race or this game called life, right? You know, so I thought I started off low growing up. Then I went back to Barbados, where my family is from, and I saw where my parents started off, and it was even lower, right? So I'm like, man, I really started here, and because compared to like other countries, right? And when you go there and you see people living in huts, they got like stones on top of their house because they don't put it down, right? So then things go in perspective. Like, all right, yeah, I grew up in inner city in Brooklyn, but compared to a rural area in Barbados or a third world country or somewhere in other parts of America, I had a lot compared to someone else, right? So put things in perspective, right? So, but you gotta be in charge of that story. But it's hard.
Yeah.
Right? No,
and someone said to me once, you know, there's always someone doing better than you, and there's always someone doing worse than you.
That's true. And it took me a bit to understand and appreciate what I did have, because one thing about being in marketing is our job is to convince you need it, right? So I'm like, why do I think I need a Lamborghini? I don't think I can even fit in that car. You know, I'm like, how do they have my money before I even made the money? You know, I'm like, man, no, I'm gonna get that mansion out there. I'm like, yo, I own a house. I'm like, I can't even barely keep this house clean.
Right?
2,600 square feet. You know what I'm saying? I was like, imagine if I had something double or triple this size. How do I clean that? Well, you got to pay for somebody. And then you got to do lawn care. Then you got to heat that and keep electricity in the house.
Right, then you got to heat it.
You know, so like, yeah, you could do that. But like, man, do I want to do that? You know?
But do I want to do that? Yeah, exactly.
So, but all these things that they made it seem like since you're young, like this is what you got to do. Buy it, right? You know, like, all right, once I hit $100,000.
The American dream.
American dream, right? But then I realized that dream is wherever you want it to be, right? And no, my dream isn't better than your dream, you know? So I think you really hit something there. And if you listen to this, really take stock of that, because it took me a while to figure out I'm running a race for me and my family, and that's it, right? And the way I do things necessarily isn't better. It's just the way I do things. Someone else might think this is boring, and that's fine, because it ain't their race, right? So we got different levels to this. You know, if you don't make $1 billion, you know, it's not a bad life, man. Depends what you comparing it to, right? If you try to compare it to one of those billionaires, then you might be sad all day, right? But if you're comparing it like, all right, I started here, you know, and I was able to elevate, you know, one generation to here, you know, my daughters might take it to here, because some of the roadblocks I face, she won't face those, like the same things I face, because she started a different playing field, right? And then her kids hopefully will start at a different level, and you go on, right? So sometimes you got to build those different levels to their generation, right? So let's wind it down. Oh, thank you. Let's wind it down. Let's get it into what are some of your favorite books, podcasts? What's piquing your interest of late?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I made a little cheat sheet here. I listen to podcasts a lot, believe it or not, but I tend to listen to them in the evening when I'm, you know, feeding the cats and just kind of winding down my day and kind of drifting off to sleep. Although I love a lot of the true crime podcasts, so I end up with some really cool dreams sometimes. And so, you know, within, you know, listening to Monsters Among Us and Morbid, Keep It Weird, and, you know, certainly the Astonishing Legends guys, there are some other podcasts that are more like business oriented. Certainly Ugurus, Ugurus, Ugurus is a group that I joined and did some studying with, and he's got a great podcast out there. They're relatively short, and they're about all different aspects of business, and I find that really worthwhile and valuable. So thanks for continuing on that. There's also a podcast called World Changing Women, done by some of the folks from the conscious capitalism movement. But they really are getting in and interviewing some of the world's most dynamic women. There are a lot of different podcasts out there. One of the things about podcasts that I enjoy is the fact that there are so many, and you can, you know, listen in and you can go really deep on a topic, like history. Yep. Probably because I was, you know, watching like some of the Tudors and, you know, some of the Spanish princess, you know, I was watching some of that, and I really wanted to know about the history at that time. So I pulled up a couple of podcasts and really went deep. So some revisionist history, or Noble Blood by Aaron Mahnke, or hardcore history are some of the historic ones as well. There's a couple of books that I have on my Kindle right now that I am looking forward to reading. One's called Obviously Awesome, which is kind of a newer book focused on kind of a marketing angle. Another one about business is called The E-Myth Revisited, which I'm really looking forward to getting into. And lastly, something called Quantum Enigma, which is focused on more of the connection between quantum theory and quantum analysis and consciousness. So just some light, reading that I like to, do in my spare time.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mixed it up with personal fun and favorites and some business ones, right? Because we do, I think a lot of people do that. Like, we have self-help ones, and then we have some ones that we just want to just learn because we're curious in it, right? So that was cool. So before we go today, how can the audience contact you? Just to connect with you and develop the relationship, or if I'm a business and I'm trying to build my brand, how do I get in contact with you?
Thanks so much for that. Yeah, and believe me, shout out if you would like to connect and just get my opinion on something, or just chat with me, or let me learn from you. That would be awesome. So feel free. You can reach me. My website is jlBrandme.com. jlBrandme.com, and my email address is jl, the two initials, jl at jlBrandme.com. My company is jlBrand Marketing. I obviously didn't get too creative when it came to naming my company, but so you can reach me at jl@jlbrandme.com, or through LinkedIn, or however you'd like to reach out. Feel free. I actually, I do volunteer with DECA. They're the high school organization. And I had recorded a little video about a value proposition. What is a value proposition and why you need it, et cetera. And one of the students from DECA actually reached out, because on my website, I say, hey, schedule a free coffee. We'll have a virtual coffee. And turns out he's this fantastic student. He, during his quarantine for COVID, decided to start his own clothing line. And it's been so rewarding, because he initially reached out to ask me some questions, and it's been so meaningful, and I'm learning so much just, working with him. So absolutely, I encourage any of you want to reach out, go ahead. No stalking. I have a gun, but but feel free to reach out.
He's not joking. All right, sweet. Well, it's been a great time. Well, Sly Gittens and JL are out. Peace.
Thank you so much, Sly.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for joining.